If your ex still loves you, why aren't they coming back? It's one of the most confusing parts of the breakup. People assume there's only one explanation, and that is that they just don't love you anymore. But that's often not what's happening. In many cases, your ex feels like they have to stick with the breakup, even if they have doubts. And I'm going to explain why. Number one, they need to prove to themselves they made the right decision. Because a breakup is such a difficult, painful, emotional thing, they want to feel like they were right about it, especially before they get back into the drama or risking future pain. And since they've hurt someone that they still care about, they want to think it was for a reason. And that reason is, well, we just weren't supposed to be together, or this is better for me to be single, to be with someone else. Otherwise, they have to think that they hurt someone they cared about for no reason. So it's actually easier at the start for them to think, this is the right thing for me, this is what I should have done, this makes sense, this is logical, this is just how it has to be. And so they actually begin looking for evidence that they were right. And that's why the response after the breakup from you can be so important, because they will see it as evidence. He won't leave me alone. She won't give me what I want. It's all about her. I want the breakup and she doesn't. But that's not good enough because it's always about her and not what I want. As illogical as that is, because when someone wants to leave you, you don't just say, oh, well, if that's what you want, sure. No, it's, I love you. We can work this out. How could we do this to each other? How could you do this to me and to us? Those are actually natural, normal responses. But someone who is looking for justification will act like it's a problem, that you have a negative response to it, that you should just make it completely easy on them and not show them any pain because they don't want to see you in pain. And they will turn you into the villain. Suddenly you're controlling. Suddenly you're a narcissist. Suddenly you're a stalker because you're simply asking them if they would please talk to you about this. What they are doing is reinforcing their own choice. They want to be right. We always want to be right after we've made a decision. And they know how it looks. That it looks bad if they were to break up with you and get back together, or they were to say, I want a divorce, but then they stay with you and they're in and out. They leave and they come back. They know what that looks like to other people. They know what it looks like to you, and they know what it looks like to themselves. And so a lot of times they will try to stick with their decision, right or wrong, just because it feels more stable. But there's an even more tempting reason for them. And I'm going to get to that in the next point. Number two, relief can feel like certainty. Immediately after a breakup, or if it's a marriage and someone says, I'm leaving, and they move out, there is relief because they got something really difficult over with. They didn't want to do it. It's awkward. They don't want to hurt you. Nobody likes breaking up with someone unless they really have some mental or emotional wickedness inside of them that wants to see you hurt. And so the relief from getting that over with, having that awkward conversation and walking away can feel like, oh, see, this is better. This makes sense because I don't feel that anxiety anymore. Things seem calm. Because there's a lot of conflict when you're trying to convince someone not to leave. Voices might be raised. There's begging. It's intense. It feels traumatic. The person wanting to leave, when that's what they're convinced of, they want to get away from it. And so when they do, they get to take a sigh of relief. They get to enjoy the silence and the peace, which can make them think, this is what I should have done. This is proof that what I did is best for me. The arguments stop. The pressure disappears. At least that's what it looks like, because they're not having to justify it to you and have interaction with you about it. They just get to avoid it. They get to escape it. But relief fades and reality often comes shining through. And that can be hopeful when you're wanting to restore the relationship or save the marriage. But there's even a more likely reason that they're sticking with the breakup in point number three. Number three is that coming back too quickly feels like failure. Nobody likes admitting mistakes. Nobody likes to say, I'm wrong. That's very awkward. It also feels like that they're giving in, because if they had some issues with the relationship, it feels like if they say I was wrong to leave, that they are basically saying it was okay for you to mistreat me, or it was okay for our relationship to have all these struggles, and I'm going to accept that going forward. It feels like giving in, and that they'll look weak or indecisive, or that quite simply that they have failed to be able to stay away from you which they think might even give you too much power back. And so sometimes they stay away much longer than they even need to, than makes any sense, and they even risk you moving on. And that can oftentimes really be a boomerang effect when they realize it's been this long and we haven't spoken. And that can work in your favor, but a lot of times it's simply because they don't want to have to even face the reality that they might have been wrong about this thing because of multiple reasons having to do even with how you view them or other people, because they know what it looks like to other people. He's in, he's out. She's in, she's out. She's yes, she's no. Who knows what she's going to want tomorrow? They know what that looks like. And so a lot of times, especially if they assume you still want them back and that you will going forward, they will stick with the breakup or the separation longer than they need to. But sometimes it has to be even harder than that. And I'm going to talk about that in the next point. Number 4, sometimes they need to experience life without you. This is when it can be most risky. This is when things can go wrong, but sometimes it's necessary and it often works in your favor more than you realize. And let me just clarify that no contact is not punishment. That's not the goal. It's preserving your dignity. It's giving them what they want when they want to be away from you. How is giving them that punishment? Sometimes it does punish them, but it's not because you did it. It's because consequences and reality make it so. They need enough time to actually see what life is like without you and that it's not what they wanted, that they're actually missing you, that they're actually feeling lonely, that they're actually reflecting on the situation and realizing that it didn't make sense to break up. And that takes a lot longer than someone who's hurting and wanting to get back together realizes, especially if changes need to happen. They don't expect you to make changes that are real in a week, 2 weeks, even a month. A lot of times it's longer than that they expect it will take longer, even if you have decided you need to make those changes. If that's really what needs to happen, they assume changes take a while, and that's usually true. But until they actually experience life without you, they're only imagining what life's like without you. They assume it's not going to be that difficult or that they will feel better quickly. And when that doesn't happen, the automatic response is, well, something's wrong. Maybe this was a mistake. And that's when you being in no contact and them not hearing from you. And I'm talking more to dating relationships. For marriage relationships, it can be different. And so I encourage you to get my free mini course on saving a marriage at marriageradio.com in the marriage help section. It's a free course at marriageradio.com in the marriage help section. If this is a dating relationship, get my reunion blueprint. It's just $7 at reunionblueprint.com. That's reunionblueprint.com. But if you are in no contact, the assumption tends to be that you are moving on with your life, because even though they can't really see this after they break up with you, the assumption is that if you still wanted them back, that you would still be talking to them about it. And pretty quickly, when they stop hearing from you and they stop seeing your effort, they start to assume that you are moving on with your life. At nighttime, they think, I'm sure he's out, I'm sure she's out, and that people are interested in them because I was at one point. And if you notice, that's kind of how you view it too. When it's at night, you kind of wonder, what are they doing? Are they laying in bed alone, or are they out, or are they with someone? We tend to think that way because we all know very, very, very few people, almost no one, is willingly going to live a life of loneliness and celibacy. When they're not hearing from you, they can actually see evidence that you are moving on and that you can stay away from them and that you can even walk away and that maybe this is even turning you off. So there's lots of positives to simply giving them the breakup. And when I say giving them the breakup, I mean not fighting them anymore on it. It makes sense when they say that they want it to say, I don't want that. We can work this out, and to try to talk them into staying for a short period of time. But when they are not giving in, when they're not willing to, and they say they want the breakup, your best bet is to give that to them. Now, again, marriage can be different depending on the circumstances. I'm speaking more to dating relationships. If you are married, get that free mini course at marriageradio.com. But when someone is leaving you, generally speaking, fighting them on it will either only work temporary or will make them fight harder to get away from you. Which brings me into point number 5, pressure makes them stay gone for longer. And this is where most people accidentally sabotage reconciliation. They text, they push, they ask, have your feelings changed? Have you thought any more about what I said? Things like that. And whenever you talk to them, you have these long, emotional, exhausting conversations. And so they start to associate that stress, that difficulty, that exhaustion with you. And so now they just don't want to be around you, and they see your text come up and there's anxiety right away. It's, oh no, another text from them. And basically it tells them, I haven't accepted your decision. I'm desperate to get you back. I want you back. And it gives them no reason to come back because they could do that. It's an option. They have not burned that bridge with you. And so there's no reason for them to if they have doubts, because if those doubts ever go away, well, they could just come back to you, which is what you're wanting. They don't see any kind of clock ticking on their ability to be with you. And at the moment, they don't want it very much anyway. And so you're kind of in a total catch-22 with them. And it can make them feel even more committed to staying away from you. That's why it's so important that after you have made that initial objection and request for them to work it out, that you back off, that you give it to them and you let them get into the consequences as soon as possible. Let them start asking the question, if he's not pursuing me anymore, if she's not pursuing me anymore, does that mean they're done? Does that mean they're moving on with their life? Because that's what can actually cause them to reconsider and question the breakup. Whereas before, they just wanted to get away from you. And as I mentioned in an earlier point, that relief that they're not having to deal with you anymore and having to defend themselves and have those difficult conversations, the relief can actually make them feel like they've made the right decision. The last thing you want is for them to feel that whenever they get away from you, life is easier. Think about that. But I bet you haven't considered this. Number 6, time creates new information. Several weeks later, the relief disappears, the loneliness appears, special occasions happen, weekends alone can happen. Dating isn't what they expected. I hear that a lot. They reflect back on the relationship and they realize something they hadn't thought about before. Now they actually have to consider that maybe you are moving on with your life and that they could lose you. Something happens and they think he would have been so comforting during this time, or helpful, or she would have been warm and kind to me during this. It wouldn't have been lonely. All kinds of things can happen when you allow them to have time without you. And this is why after weeks, people hear from their ex. And I'm not saying it happens every time that an ex comes back or that a separated spouse comes back. But I am saying that when you consider this and you do this, you give them this silence. It has a better track record than the opposite. And they reach out, they come back, they want to talk, not because you talked them into it, but because time changed how they felt and caused them to look at it differently. So if your ex seems absolutely convinced today, don't be convinced that that's how they'll always feel. People often need time to experience the consequences of their actions before they feel like they need to make a change. If there's not a negative, why would they change? And right now, the negative can actually be interacting with you and talking to you because you are making it difficult on them. They don't want to be around you, and you don't want to put them in that place. Your greatest advantage is not convincing them. It's allowing reality to do what your words can't. That's one of the reasons that no contact is powerful, or if you're married, strategic contact that I get into in the free mini course. And none of this is because it manipulates the other person, but because it gives you both time for emotions to settle and the truth of the relationship to become much clearer. Remember to get my $7 reunion blueprint if this is a dating relationship that's broken up. If this is a marriage where your spouse wants to separate or is considering divorce, get my free mini course on saving a marriage at marriageradio.com in the marriage help section. You can also book a coaching session with me at myexbackcoach.com/coaching. That's myexbackcoach.com/coaching. This has been Coach Lee, and as always, thank you for watching.